Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is character quotations on Hyde from The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So I have quite a few resources with me right now. I have my York notes, my shopping haul, my CGP guide, and also my copy of Jekyll and Hyde. I misplaced my book, I don't know where it is. And I've also got some quotes that I picked out during lunchtime because A, I have no life, B, I should have done it earlier, but I have my whole life being lazy. Okay, well, let's just cut the chase and go straight into it. So the first time we're introduced to Hyde, we're not actually introduced to Hyde, we just hear about Enfield and Utterson speaking about Hyde. I'm just going to start off with a quick summary on the character of Hyde. Hyde is, you can argue, the alter ego of Dr. Jekyll, or you can even say the evil incarnate of Dr. Jekyll, but one thing for sure is he is definitely the evil side of Jekyll. Dr. Jekyll brought him into being when he created a potion which was initially meant to separate the good side to Jekyll and just to have him as a good person, but it actually ended up with Hyde being created, which is the evil side of him. Now, after Hyde had been brought into being, Jekyll found ways. Jekyll was a highly respected man in society. He was a doctor, hence the vocative doctor, and he was trusted by so many people. He had a high group of friends that regarded highly of him, and but with Hyde, everyone immediately takes a very immediate disliking to Hyde, and they can't tell why. They actually don't know why. There's just this, you know, when you like see someone and you're just like, oh, I mean, like, don't judge a book by its cover, but yeah, that's Hyde. But that's so bad. Okay, and Hyde is created to do the bad things that Jekyll wants to do, but eventually Hyde gets a little too naughty, gets very naughty indeed, and Jekyll can't stop turning into him. I don't know what it is about Hyde that Jekyll can't stop turning into. But he can't stop turning into Hyde. Yeah, I get them mixed up sometimes. So yeah, that is the basis of Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde are the same person. Hyde is just the evil side of Jekyll. So let's actually get towards the quotes. Get to the quotes, sorry. Oh. Please forgive me, I was born in India. I picked out the quotes chapter by chapter, so it's easy to follow / reference, and it's all in chronological order. Yeah, so the first time we hear about Hyde is when Enfield and Utterson are going on their daily walks, besties, and they're having a conversation, and Enfield, well, they're not having a conversation because they don't talk to each other, but then Enfield brings up the story of Hyde being very horrible to a little girl. He says, Hyde trampled calmly. Now, the reason why Stevenson uses this juxtaposition, trampled calmly, is to actually show the malign character, the severely malign character of Hyde. Now, the fact that he's trampling calmly, the word calmly, when you do something calmly, it almost seems like you're comfortable with it, and the fact that he's trampling calmly shows that he's comfortable with it, he's used to it. It's part of his character, it's part of him, and it's used to outline, like I said before, his severely malign character. And also, when Hyde was paying compensation of £100, I think it was, to the girl's family, he used a cheque which belonged to Jekyll, and the quote I have for that is, very pink of the proprieties. And now Enfield's saying that to describe Jekyll, so it's not really a Hyde quotation, but you can use it to compare to Hyde, and you can see the clear contrast between Jekyll and Hyde. Now, the word proprieties, it means conformity to conventionally accepted standards of behaviour or morals. So yeah, you can see that Jekyll is a very reputable, respected gentleman, whereas Hyde is hated, pure evil, polar opposites of each other. And then we get Enfield trying to sum up what he thinks of Hyde. He says he can't express what it is about him that he doesn't like. So he says something wrong with his appearance, something displeasing, something downright detestable. Now, the anaphora of the word something shows that his struggle to really gather his thoughts on Hyde, because there's just something really wrong about him. He doesn't exist out of the world of science. He's not a naturally occurring being. Something you can't really tell what's wrong with Hyde, but yeah. And then the words displeasing, downright detestable. Now you have the alliteration of the letter D, and the letter D is a very harsh sound, so you can kind of say it's to show how harsh the character of Hyde is. Yeah. Now moving on to chapter 2, Search for Mr. Hyde. I think this was the best chapter in terms of gathering quotes for Hyde, this one and the last chapter, because it is basically focusing in on Hyde. So first we get Utterson is waiting to meet Hyde. So one day he actually does get to meet Hyde. When we get introduced to him, his footsteps are described as odd, light footsteps. That suggests there's something secretive about him, something to hide. And then you get Mr. Hyde. He's already described as small. Then once Utterson goes, Hyde, is that you? Something along those lines. It says that Mr. Hyde shrank back with a hissing intake of the breath. Him shrinking back only emphasises smallness. So you can kind of say that's a metaphor for him in society. He's not as high up in society as Utterson or Jackal, whatever. But I think the most interesting part of that quote is the hissing intake of the breath. When you hear the word hissing, you immediately think of a snake. And by Stevenson giving Hyde animalistic qualities, we actually see how inferior he is to human beings, because we regard animals down here and humans up here, and I think that's a very important thing to take into account as well. And then we have the quote, the other snarled aloud into a savage laugh. You can argue that is use of sibilance, which is snarled and savage. I think that quote is very self-explanatory. I think the next one's also self-explanatory, which is pale and dwarfish. He's also said to be troglodytic, and the word a troglodyte is an ancient cave dweller, so we can see like he is actually reverted back to our primitive selves, and that's where the context of the whole Charles Darwin origin of species versus the crisis of faith comes into the book. Then moving on to chapter 4, the Carew murder case. This is the chapter where Hyde has basically just spiraled out of control, and he's just pure evil at this moment. The only quote I have from this chapter is, next moment with ape-like fury he was trampling his victim under his it's probably under his foot, but the fact that Stevenson uses, I think it's simply ape-like fury, it's basically the origin of species, Charles Darwin. Then we have chapter 6, which is the incident of Dr. Lanyon. In this, Hyde is described as callous and violent, which is the exact polar opposite to Jackal, and as Jackal is described to have kindness. Now, he is also described as disreputable, which is a contrast to Jackal, who has been described as reputable. I think that's quite self-explanatory, so you talk about the dual nature of man. Yeah, then we have chapter 8, The Last Night. The quote I definitely picked up at first was, Utterson and Paul walked straight into that room and saw Hyde lying on the bed, dead, and he's clad in clothes way too big for him. The quote I picked up on was, he was dressed in clothes far too large for him. I think that is a very important quote from the book, because it's a metaphor, and it's to show that Hyde can never fit the expectations of Jekyll. Jekyll is highly respected, and when you strip away the facade that Jekyll has and you find this Hyde, it's so sad. And the last quote I picked up on was self-destroyer, and that's because suicide is a religious taboo, and it still is. So I thought, like, Hyde being described as a self-destroyer, but Jekyll, them still not knowing that Jekyll is Hyde, them picking up the fact that Hyde is a self-destroyer, it kind of shows that they just want to make Hyde seem as horrible as possible, like everything that a Victorian gentleman cannot be, that is what Hyde is. Then we have chapter 10, which is Dr. Jekyll's full statement of the case. Now the first quote I picked up on was, like a school, he's describing, the first quote I picked up on was him describing how it felt to be Hyde. He describes it as, like a schoolboy, strip off these lendings and spring healing into the sea of liberty. The sea of liberty, metaphor, and like a schoolboy, simile. So the use of, he uses figurative language and metaphors and similes to show that being Hyde, he had no consequences and he was free of responsibilities. Like, that's why he enjoyed being Hyde so much. I have a very good quote, which Jekyll's talking about how it feels like, how it felt like when Hyde was allowed to be Hyde. He says, "My devil had been long caged, he came out roaring." I think the use of religious imagery and the fact that he's describing Hyde as a devil, as the devil, is a perfect metaphor for the evil that Hyde is. Then Jekyll says, "Yet the creature was astute." Now, the meaning of the word astute is having or showing an ability to accurately assess situations or people and use that to your advantage. And that basically shows that the longer Jekyll was gone, the more time Hyde had to be himself. He grew in intelligence. He was basically before described as not dumb, but like he wasn't as clever as Jekyll. But now that he was picking up and picking up intelligence, but he was getting more clever and he knew how to use stuff for his benefit. So I think that's an important quote as well. And then the last quote I have on here is, "That child of hell had nothing human, nothing lived in him but fear and hatred." And I think that's a lovely quote to summarise the character of Hyde. He is nothing but evil, and the only reason why he is evil is because there is nothing inside him apart from fear and hatred. I think these quotes are obviously you don't memorise every single quote, but it's really important to make sure that you do know a lot of, not a lot, but like a few of these quotes, like pick out the best ones. I thought these were the most important when describing Hyde from the novel. Obviously you can condense it down, and if the question is on Hyde, like use the best ones you think describes Hyde and whatnot. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I really do hope you found it helpful. So stay tuned for Thursday's video, which is a B1 summary for the exam board OCR 21st century.